Hello, everyone. I'm Farah Nasser, the anchor for Global News Toronto, and your host this evening. I want to welcome everyone to the official launch of Unity Through Sport. We would have, of course, loved to gather with you all in person to mark this milestone, but Unity Through Sport is thrilled that you could join us here virtually for their first major event. And this event would not be possible without Unity Through Sport's major sponsor, Elliotte Capital Partners. The charity is launching during a crucial turning point in society. We know that sport has the power to bring people of all cultures and diversities together, and Unity intends on being a leader in this area. Tonight's event features so many diverse, influential, impactful, and important members of the sports community. To help us learn a little bit more about Unity Through Sport, I'd like to welcome the chairs of the organization, Alex Wojhanski and Jen Megan, to say a few words.
Hi there. I'm Alex Wojhanski, founder and co-chair of Unity Through Sport.
And I'm Jen Megan, community member and co-chair of Unity Through Sport.
We are so thrilled to be here today to officially launch this incredible initiative. We've been working on Unity for close to 2 years, and through the ever-changing world and some very challenging times, we are finally here and ready to make a major impact.
People ask us, why is this so important? Well, right now, we are experiencing a rise in hate across the world that should concern everyone. Our society is increasingly polarized, with interactions between diverse groups becoming more and more infrequent, and misinformation or conspiracy theories about them gaining traction. We must take action to stop the advancement of anti-Semitism, anti-Black racism, anti-Indigenous racism, and other forms of hate and discrimination.
Members of the sports community have the ability to inspire and shape attitudes. Sports can bring people together on neutral ground where they can rise above differences, break down boundaries, and learn to work together. We are really trying hard to bring the locker room mentality to everyday life, where it's all about team and camaraderie, regardless of faith, gender, religion, and culture.
As Nelson Mandela so perfectly stated, sport has the power to change the world. It has the power to inspire. It has the power to unite people in a way that little else does. We know it won't happen overnight, but it's initiatives like Unity that will help us end this constant division that has only increased throughout the pandemic.
We want to thank our tremendous supporters, especially our VIP sponsor, Elliotte Capital Partners, and our other incredible supporters and partners, such as Must Speak Foundation, Larry and Judy Tannenbaum Foundation, UJ Federation of Greater Toronto, Creative Community for Peace, Fanatics, and many more.
We would also like to thank the incredible athletes, sports executives, sports personalities, and our countless volunteers who have invested their time, energy, and resources in making this event so special, and in turn, helping Unity Through Sport become a reality.
This event is just the start of something very special. Future initiatives will include social media campaigns, virtual and in-person sports development, and educational programs for youth, online resources and digital content, scholarship funds for youth, the Unity Games, Multicultural Sports Hall of Fame, and much more. We are fully committed to our goal of creating a global inclusive community through sport. Enjoy the event, and thanks again for your support.
Hi, everyone. I'm Naomi Parnas, former reporter for CTV News Toronto and the co-founder now of KPW Communications. I am so thrilled to be here with you today for a really incredible panel discussion with some really incredible people. I'm going to start off by introducing all of them to you. We have Shawne Green. Shawne is a former MLB All-Star, Silver Slugger, and Gold Glove Award winner. He is the co-founder and chairman of the world-renowned digital media and content creation platform Greenfly. Nona Lee. Nona is a former college basketball player and is currently the executive vice president and chief legal officer of the Arizona Diamondbacks, and is also the chair of D-Backs for Change, JEDI, which stands for Justice, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Council. Jamal Mashburn. Jamal is a former NBA All-Rookie team member and All-Star, and one of the youngest players in history to score 50 points in an NBA game. He is currently an entrepreneur that owns over 90 businesses, including car dealerships, restaurants, and racehorses. And Doug Whaley. Doug is a former college football player, former executive with the Pittsburgh Steelers, former GM of the Buffalo Bills, and is currently a co-managing partner of a major sports investing company, Beautiful Game Group. Big mouthful there, but that's because we have some very incredible people who are here with us today. And I want to start off by asking all of you the same question, which is to talk about how your culture or background has shaped your identity, both professionally and personally? Maybe we'll start with you, Shawn.
Yeah, so I'm a Jewish athlete. I was a Jewish athlete. Now I'm a Jewish retired athlete. But, it's something that in sports, professional sports is on the rarer side. There's more and more Jewish players popping up, I think, each year. But when I was playing in the 90s and 2000s, it was pretty unique. And so that identity really locked in with me as a baseball player. I was a Jewish baseball player, and I didn't grow up in a very religious Jewish household, but I learned a lot more and became closer to that identity as a Jewish person and a Jewish athlete. And once I was playing and was embraced, throughout North America, wherever I played, by the Jewish communities.
Nona, how about you?
Yeah, I've been an athlete all my life, and I started out as an AAU swimmer and water polo player, and I'm a Black woman, so I was a young Black girl, first Black person to join the swim team, and that definitely helped shape who I was as a person, and helped inform how I address some of the experiences I've gone through in my personal life, and that's also helped. In addition to being a collegiate basketball player, has helped me develop the skills that I needed to succeed in my professional life as well.
For sure. We'll get into more of that after. Doug, what about you?
Well, for me, being a minority and also being a child of a military person, it was instilled in me early that you have to set yourself apart. You're automatically going to be pointed out as different, but you can use that as your advantage. Be so good at what you do that they stop seeing you being different. They start seeing you as being good. And he says, if it doesn't go that way, my father always taught, never be bitter, strive to be better. So it was instilled in me that you are going to be looking for respect, but you have to give respect and treat people the way you want to be treated, but always have that air and that personal evaluation of any instance you're in. You have to rise above whatever somebody's trying to put you down about.
Wow, I love that. I love that. I got to tell my kids that, but that's a great way of thinking about it. And again, we'll talk more about this. Jamal, how has it helped shape you?
Being a Black kid or a young man, I don't like to consider myself older, even though I am retired at this particular point, at least from sports. So athletics keep me young, for sure. And growing up in New York City, born and raised in Harlem, I grew up in a single parent household with my mother. She passed away about 1.5 years ago. And the one thing that I believe that I had an advantage on is her wisdom and her core values that she instilled in me. And she's originally from Beckley, West Virginia. So coming to New York, she really had to figure it out into a fast-paced city. So when I was born and I'm an only child, she took me all over the place in New York City and exposed me to all different cultures. So New York City was actually an advantage for me because it was a melting pot of different cultures. And then also she instilled in me to have no fear, have no fear of anything, try everything, do everything, no matter what limits people try to put on you. It's all up to you. And I know we have different obstacles in front of us that others place in front of us, but I always strive for being a better person, being a better father, a better husband, a better brother to a lot of my friends. So for me, my environment really showed me that I can do anything. And most kids coming out of New York don't have that perspective. So I try to reach back quite a few times, not only to talk about diversity, but diversity of thought. You can't be in the same place and think the same things and try to reinvent the wheel and do something different. So I'm a big believer in just exposing yourself and all young kids to all different types of cultures. Travel was a big thing for me as a young kid. And that's what athletics did for me. It allowed me the vehicle to travel, because when you play AAU sports, you get an opportunity to get outside of your environment.
So we're in the middle of an awakening. I think we all know that right now, what's going on all around the world. We still have a very long way to go. I think the last few years have proved that to us. But I think the paradigm has started to shift a little when it comes to discrimination against visible minorities in the LGBTQ community. But how do we bring more exposure to and curb the tide of discrimination against Jewish, Asian, Indigenous communities? How do we make sports more diverse? Who wants to start first?
I could jump in. I think, I was fortunate as a baseball player to play in a sport with a ton of diversity. Like I think one time when I was with the Dodgers, if you say that I spoke Hebrew, which I don't, but if you throw that in there, I mean, there was, I was a Jewish player. We had a player from Taiwan. We had a French Canadian whose French was his first language. We had a bunch of players from Latin America, all different countries. We had Japan, Korea, all on the same team, and we were like brothers. And I think a lot of people, I think one of the big problems, especially, in our country and in the US in particular, I think a lot of people grow up in areas that are, very, there's not a lot of diversity. And so they just don't have exposure to that. And they don't realize that, we're all the same, and we all have the same wants, needs, likes, and things that are important to us. And I just think it's important for the people that they look up to. So nowadays with influencers, I have 2 daughters. So, obviously YouTube influencers and TikTok. And I think there needs to be more conversation where their eyeballs are and where what they're listening to, and social media. And I just think the people that they look up to need to bring this to light. And it's happened a lot over the last year or 2 in particular, but it just needs to continue, and people need to talk about it. Because if you're not exposed to other people, other races, it's a different mindset. You have to be able to listen to people who you believe and trust. And nowadays, I think it's a lot of people that you see on different types of social media.
So does that mean you think it should be athletes? It should be young athletes who are speaking out right now?
Yeah, I love to see, a lot of the athletes. LeBron's done a great job, and he's been, very, very, progressive in a lot of his stances and opinions and things he talks about. I think there needs to be more and more of that. And you see a lot of NBA players, Jamal could talk about that. NBA players have been great. I mean, they've done a ton. And I think they have such an impact, on popular culture that, that's one sport in particular that I think has done the most. But hopefully other sports, like baseball, is different. Baseball, we have, a lot of Latin players. And so there's the added challenge of having, different language barriers and things like that. But I just think the more that these athletes can bring stuff to the surface and talk about it, I think the better.
Yeah, Jamal, what do you think? I mean, we saw stuff on people's shoes, their running shoes, on their jerseys, on their buses when they were coming in. Shawn was talking about with the NBA. So what do you think? I mean, how do we make this shift? How do we continue the progress that we've started?
Well, I think one of the first things that I've noticed is that, as Shawn mentioned, popular culture has really taken a hold of how people think and what they look at and what they are willing to digest. You go back to music, hip hop music has really made a transition from one silo to being very much popular music nowadays. So I think that's aided in people looking at diversity. But also, too, I truly believe that the kids that we're birthing and parenting at this particular time have a different thought process on community. And I think that's very critical. I mean, my daughter's 25 years old and I have a son that's 19 years old. And they're always talking about community. How can we bring people together? And I think social media has added a voice to the voiceless, and also added a voice to people we probably don't want to hear, but their message needs to be a part of this conversation as well. I think the NBA has done a great job based upon how they market their players and the individualness of those players to build up the NBA. I've also said that a lot of times that, diversity is critical, because how do you move the needle and how do you move people forward? How do you evolve folks? And I think COVID-19 has presented us with the greatest opportunity. It's the greatest disruptor, and it's allowed us as people, individuals, to reflect on what's really important. Watching people die, being sequestered in your home, it allows you to really dive deep inside and really understand, or what you don't understand, and to find a vehicle and an avenue to figuring that out. And it could divide us, but I think overall, I think the communities have really embraced change. You see a lot more people, and I've always said this. I mean, when you talk about minorities, it's reflective of. It seems to me that people who are the majority, if they talk about diversity or included, it's like you're taking something from their pie. They don't think you're adding anything to the pie. So I truly believe that, for America to continue to progress and continue to be the quote unquote superpower, we need to be the leaders, but we also need to hear everything else around the world. We're not the sole spot of all and everything. All thoughts and all cultures should be invited in to have the conversation.
Nona, what do you think? I saw you nodding your head there a little.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that both Jamal and Shawn have said. My perspective is that we also need to take sport to the community, or to the communities. And specifically what I'm referring to is historically underrepresented communities that haven't in the past participated as much in certain sports. I mean, we can use baseball as an example. Certainly there's diversity because we have a lot of players from Latin American countries, but there is not a tremendous representation of players from underrepresented communities here in the United States. And that is because, well, I think there are a number of reasons, but I think in large part because perhaps people from underrepresented communities haven't had as much opportunity to be exposed. They don't see role models in the same way in those places, either on the fields or courts or on the business side. And so I think it's really important for sports organizations to take advantage of the opportunities that Jamal and Shawn have talked about to reach out into communities and to provide opportunities to kids. We have to start at the grassroots, and we have to start welcoming them into sports, all sports, by giving them opportunities to participate and also teaching them about the business side. I mean, that's often overlooked. And the reality is that, there's, for the most part in the sports industry, I think, there's a lack of diversity on the front office side of sports that needs to be addressed as well. And that's something that can be done also by beginning at the grassroots level and reaching kids and then reaching into colleges, et cetera, and giving opportunities both on the fields and in the front offices.
Doug, when we had conversations, just like Nona was saying, we had conversations around unity, and some of what people were saying was that, you don't see people, in particular from one culture playing hockey, or you don't see people playing, from one culture playing basketball. Do you feel like sports are becoming more diverse? I mean, how far have we gone and how far do we have to go?
We're moving in the right direction. And I think what all the panelists have hit on are two key words: exposure and education. If you are exposed to something, then you learn about it, and then it piques your interest, and you may be more willing to participate in a sport. I grew up in West Virginia, moved to Pittsburgh, never heard of hockey before. And when I moved to Pittsburgh, the Penguins got Mario Lemieux, so I got turned on to hockey. So now I'm a hockey fan. But it's exposure. And then once you're exposed to something, again, you get educated about it. And it goes along with people with different ethnic backgrounds or different lifestyles. If you're never exposed to someone with a different ethnic background or a lifestyle, and maybe someone makes a joke, and if you don't know about or have never been exposed or educated about that other race or lifestyle, you may just go along with it. But if you've ever been intimately involved with someone that joke may have been about, or that law or that rule discriminates against, then you're more likely to say, well, wait a minute, I'm not good with that. Have you thought about it from their point? And one of the best things I've always thought about and kind of ingrained and put into my thought process, in every situation, reverse it. If you're on the other side, look it through their lens. And then how would you want them to talk to you, or you to respond to that situation? Always reverse it, and that will give you a better lens on a 360 view of the world. But it all comes down to exposure and education.
Well, and I'm guessing then you all probably agree that it starts at a young age. I mean, you've got to be exposed at a young age. You've got to get kids playing the sports at a young age. You have to get them into all of these sports at a young age from all these different cultures.
No doubt about it. And that's one of the things that it's a little tricky, because especially if you have an older generation that hasn't been exposed to so many different things, they're going to be a little apprehensive. But like Jamal said, with our lifestyle now and the social media and the instant access to just about anything in the whole world, the younger generation is going to be more apt to explore and to get out of their comfort zone and to say, hey, I don't know about this, but I'm willing to learn about it and see if it does pique my interest. And that's one of the things I do. I have a 7-year-old daughter, And right now she hasn't found a sport, and she may not be into sports, but what I'm going to do is expose her to everything, be it sport related, cultural related, or entertainment related, and arts. Just expose her to everything, and then they'll find their way. But do not, I think it's a disservice to the people that we're trying to bring up, our younger generations, not to give them the ability to find out what they are really into and expose them as much as possible.
And I don't know who wants to comment on this, but how much does cost play a factor? Because obviously some sports are really expensive to get into, and it's very hard for some cultures to enter into the sports world when it's cost prohibitive.
Yeah, that's a great comment. I mean, I was originally a baseball player, but failed at baseball. I grew up in Harlem and was a lifelong Yankee fan, and then I made my first business decision at 10, where I'm not going to be a baseball player. You know, and the issue that I had with not playing baseball was I didn't have the infrastructure of people to really teach me the game that I had access to in playing basketball. I've always looked at basketball and football, meaning international football, soccer, as a common man's game. It's just a ball. It's at the end of the day. You know, baseball can get a little expensive, football as well. Hockey, I can't just imagine how expensive that can be. But for me, it's always been about competition. And you go find the best players wherever they lie. And those are what true athletes do. And that's how you bring people together. And then you sit around and you have a conversation. And as Shawn can attest, and everybody else that's on this panel can attest, the locker room is the greatest place to be, to have conversations. You'll be surprised what comes out of that locker room. Some educated, some not educated, but people are willing to have that dialogue. You know, it's just not as publicized. So I think the locker room and having access to upper management and to owners and to enlighten a conversation, because we all come from different backgrounds and we all have something valuable to add.
So in speaking of management, sorry, Jamal, because you've publicly stated your desire to be an NBA owner and partner of the league. So if granted that opportunity, how would it feel to be one of the few Black owners, and what would that mean to other Black players?
You know, I've pursued that on a number of occasions and gotten close at the NBA level. The one interesting thing about NBA ownership or ownership, it's a huge responsibility, you know, and oftentimes in my business life, you have to take a step back. Do I really want to own this thing, you know, or do I want to participate in it? I mean, you know, because at the end of the day, does it generate revenue? And what are my expenses? And sometimes these NBA teams are just a little bit too, the valuations are just a little bit too high. I hope we get to a place, if I do have that opportunity again, that I won't be called a Black owner. I'll just be called a steward of a franchise at the end of the day. So for me, you know, I hope that comes to fruition. But right now, I think I'm better served of doing what I'm doing as a guy that has transitioned from professional sports into the business world. And everybody doesn't have to follow my path. It can be a lot of other different career options. But I think sharing the transition component and getting away from how much dollars a person's make and really concentrating on the journey or what they own, I think that's probably more important, because as a kid growing up, I wish I had a mentor or somebody that I can reach out to and say, well, how do you run a business? How do you do this? How do you do that? That came from an athletic perspective that can break it down very simplistically. So I think I want to be that voice before I get to ownership of any kind, because that's where I think my calling really lies. The NBA ownership, that's a bonus.
And Dr. Shawn, I interrupted one of you. Who did I interrupt before?
Oh, no, that was me. I was kind of on your previous point talking about, you know, how to get kids, you know, that don't have the means to play certain sports. I know Major League Baseball is trying to do more and more. They have the RBI program, rebuilding baseball in the inner cities. But I think the owners, professional leagues need to subsidize a lot of this stuff. And one thing that I think would be amazing is not just to pull teams in to play against each other from different locations for different youth tournaments, whatever, but to actually like pull kids and mix them up, you know. And that's something that for me, when I went and played in Cuba or played in Venezuela, and you're playing with all these players, you know, with a completely different background, kids who grew up in a hut with a dirt floor. And, you know, I grew up just in a middle class, you know, community in Southern California. It changed your perspective, and you realize that, you know, you become really good friends with people that you would have never interacted with. So I think I think the leagues and the teams and owners, they can do a lot to, and on the flip side, it's also building their brand, because they want, especially in baseball, it's with attention spans and all that. Now they're trying to focus on the youth and get their the love of baseball that has been a little more challenging than it was 30, 40 years ago. So I think it's a way to kind of solve a lot of things, but also just help people get along better and understand other cultures.
Doug, I want to ask you, in 2013, you became only the 7th Black general manager in NFL history. We were talking before about Black owners. What did that mean to you? And do you see improvement in the area in today's game?
Well, it meant that I'm carrying a mantle, and I have to be a steward of something that was perpetuated before me. And I have to make sure that if I am a mentor, I've had mentors, but I have to be a mentor. And a lot of it is going to be placed on my actions. So it's one of those things where you can really get wrapped up on the gravity of it, but that takes you away from doing the job. And the best way to give back and be a mentor or a light post in a field is to be the best at what you're tasked at doing. So I never tried to get too overwhelmed about it, but just try to put one foot in front of the other and win each day. Have we gotten better? Yes. Do we have a long way to go? Absolutely. I think it will always be a perpetual fight, but as long as we're recognizing that we need to go somewhere and start implementing we've done a lot of talking, especially this last year and a half, 2 years. Now let's transfer that talking into actions. And a lot of actions, it just goes back again to my thought process of exposure. We need to get ethnic minorities, underrepresented people in the room with owners in a non-work environment, in a casual environment, so they can get exposed to these people and get to know them and start to feel comfortable with them outside of the boardroom. And that's where a lot of it comes. If two candidates are equally talented, they're going to go with the one they feel most comfortable with. And if you've never been in a room in a non-interview setting with an owner, they're not going to feel that comfortable because there's nothing they have to connect you with. Now, if you can get them in ways of non-interview settings, like I said, and then they start to understand, oh, they have the same family dynamic I have, or, oh, they have the same interests I have, then that connection starts to foster. And then when it's decision-making, and now it's like, well, maybe I do have a connection and feel comfortable hiring the minority over the non-minority.
Well, and Nona, he was talking about putting words into action, which is exactly what you did. So tell us about D-Backs for Change and how it specifically impacts the LGBTQ community.
Yeah, we started D-Backs for Change last year following the murder of George Floyd. And it was actually the brainchild of our president and CEO, Derek Hall. And I was fortunate that he then asked me to lead it. And what we've done is developed a JEDI Council, the Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Council, which is made up of executives as well as, we call our employees team players, as well as team players throughout the organization. And one of the first things that we did was form what most people may refer to as employee resource groups. We refer to our employees as team players. So team player resource groups. And one of those is our LGBTQ plus employee resource group or team resource group. And, this one has been really important to us and has propelled us into doing a number of things. First of all, we partnered with an organization here called One Community, which leads the charge here in being sure that Arizona is open for business to everyone. We've partnered with them. We also partnered with them on LGBTQ plus inclusion training. So we had a 6-course session with them for all of our team players. We have a wonderful resource in Billy Bean with Major League Baseball, who has worked with us on some initiatives, as well as one of the things that we've done recently is change all of our family restrooms at Chase Field into inclusive restrooms, and we've done the same in the front office. And the point is, we want everyone to feel welcome here, because the reality is, to be a truly inclusive environment, everyone needs to feel comfortable bringing their whole selves here. No matter who they are, what they bring to the table. Everyone should be and should feel welcome. And that's what we're doing both for our LGBTQ plus employees and for our fans.
Amazing. And, you know, sometimes it's all about taking a stand, which you did early on in your career, Shawn. You talked about how several times you actually took a stand and said you're not going to play on Yom Kippur, which is one of the holiest days of the year. Sometimes that's what you need to do, religion is important to you, and it was important to you back then. Talk about that decision, how people reacted and what it meant to you then and now. And do you think people can still do that now? I mean, is that now acceptable?
Yeah, I think it's even more acceptable now than it was back then. So I, as a Jewish player, I was, gaining prominence in the game, and the Jewish player label was, quickly attached to me. The Jewish fans were desperate to have a Jewish athlete that they could stand behind. And throughout North America, every city I went to, I had them supporting me. And then all of a sudden, it happened for the first time. I came up in 1994, 95, those years, but I didn't have a conflict with Yom Kippur until 2001 when I was moved from Toronto to the Dodgers. And I sat out one of the games, played one of the games because it happened to conflict over a Friday night and a Saturday day game. But my decision to do it was really, I wasn't particularly religious, but I had a strong Jewish identity, and even stronger than when I was growing up because of the way the Jewish community reached out to me all throughout North America. And I wanted to stand up for the community and for the kids and say, hey, I'm with all of you, and it's important. It's important to respect your heritage. And so I sat out one of those games, and there wasn't a lot that, after it, because it was right after 9/11. So people weren't too focused on what one player was doing. There's much bigger problems. But then when it happened again in 2004, then there was, I wouldn't say there was a lot of backlash, but there was a lot of discussion, which I think was great. I mean, that's kind of the point, is to stimulate those conversations and get people talking. And it was on regular news channels that were just talking about religion and work, and it wasn't even necessarily about sports. So I think that's the beauty of sports, is you can, you can transcend, to all aspects of life. And that's what, in my one little way of impacting that conversation, I got to see that firsthand. I thought that was, it was pretty impactful.
And I think that's just a great way to wrap this up. I mean, I don't want to, we could talk for hours about this, but I think having the discussion, which is what we're doing here, and I thank you all for having the discussion here. We're talking about it. These are all things that are now out. Everything is now in the open. We're talking about it. We're trying to make changes, as we can see from Nona. They're creating organizations to make change. So we're taking the first steps, and hopefully they're big steps, because as you have all said, we do have a long way to go, but I know we've all come a long way. So thank you all for joining us here today. This was really an incredible discussion, and just stay healthy.
Thank you to the executive panel for that powerful discussion. Unity Through Sport is excited and proud to have gotten so many great ambassadors. They're going to be helping the charity as it grows and works to accomplish its mission. Here are some of the words of wisdom from some of these incredible supporters.
Hi, this is Kim Davis. I'm Senior Executive Vice President for the National Hockey League. And I just want to encourage everyone to get behind the amazing work being done by Unity Through Sport. The opportunity for us to work collectively to end racism, division, for us to come together as a community of leaders, to move forward in a spirit of cooperation and collaboration, is what Unity Through Sport is about. And so I encourage everyone to get on board, to be supporters. Unity Through Sport. Thank you so much for your work today and the vital work ahead.
The thing about sports that I've always loved is it kind of is a unifying force in a locker room, right? And we have to bring that energy of the locker room, where you have to get along to succeed, right? And there's people from every walk of life in every locker room. And if we kind of had that unity in real life outside of the locker room, I think we get along much better. And that's what I think sports does a great job of. And you have to find a way to make it work. Otherwise, you're not going to do well. You're not going to play well, and you're not going to win. It's one thing I've loved about being in a locker room, is there's many different cultures, and you have to be open to hearing from other people and so like one thing that I always loved in every locker room, and I was one of the only Jewish guys, we'll get to that in a second, I believe, is that is they were curious about my upbringing and my religion, but I was also curious to hear from them them as in other people on the team that aren't Jewish about their experiences and their backgrounds.
That's what sports does for us. It's an escape. It's a beautiful way to forget about whatever's going on. It's a way to kind of lose yourself, right? Suspend disbelief. And I've been at games where I'm hugging and high-fiving people that I've never met, but we all have this common bond. We love sports, right? It's an amazing thing. And so to play sports as a young kid, to come together with different people from different backgrounds, different beliefs and ideologies, like that's the best way and the easiest way, the quickest way to all connect.
Sometimes what you say can come across in a way in which you didn't intend it to come across, or sometimes what you say, you shouldn't say. Maybe you don't understand why you shouldn't say it, but you need to learn why you shouldn't say it. And very, very little of it is, well, none of it is with malicious intent, obviously, but I think it's everybody seeing things from other perspectives, not just this is the way I feel because this is where I grew up. That's not good enough anymore. It's got to be understanding that everybody's got different backgrounds and everybody's got different experiences.
I realize how important it is for me to build a sense of community of sports athletes in a different sport, but the same mentality that we have about playing our sport, the passion we have, and the lessons that are learned.
It's actually something that I never dreamt about because there was no one I could look at and say, I want to be her. And so at that time, I remember being struck with how many people said to me, like, you're living the dream, you're coaching in the NFL. And I would always have to correct them and say, no, this is a dream I wasn't permitted to have. But the beauty of this is that now all girls can dream this. And what we've seen over the past, 6 years is that there are now several women coaching in the National Football League. We've had, women coach in and win Super Bowls. We have not just one ref, but two. And we see that girls can now get collegiate scholarships to play flag football. And that's what happens when representation is there. That's when girls can look at a football field and dream the same way boys do, because then they can get out on the field and do the work to, go as far in the game as the boys have been able to do for a very long time.
Hi, my name is Anthony Firsker, tight end with the Tennessee Titans. I wanted to share with you how important it is to get behind initiatives like Unity Through Sport. Their goal is to bring the locker room mentality to everyday life, and as a community, stress the importance of treating everyone with respect, no matter their race, religion, or culture.
Hi, I'm Shawne Merriman, former NFL All-Pro linebacker and owner of Lights Out Extreme Fighting. I stand behind initiatives like Unity Through Sport, as they are working every day to end division and discrimination and the use of sports as a platform to bring all people together.
Hey gang, this is Jay Glazer. You may know me from the world of pro football or the world of mixed martial arts, and I'm actually here to talk about the world, and this is why I support programs like Unity Through Sport. We need to make this one united world under God. That's the way it's supposed to be. And there's just obviously been too much division in this world. We need a lot more inclusiveness here. So I love and support anything that will bring us all together because we deserve to love each other up.
Hey everyone, my name is Kwame DeMar Mason, filmmaker, director of Soul on Ice, host of Soul on Ice, the podcast, and I'm proud to be the moderator for this incredible and diverse group of individuals. So let's get started with the introductions of our panelists. First up, we've got Zach Hyman. Zach is a former Canadian Junior A Player of the Year, Hobie Baker finalist, NHL player with the Edmonton Oilers, a children's author, philanthropist, and owner of the esports company E11 Gaming. We also got Hayley Wickenheiser. Hayley is a hockey legend and pioneer, 6-time Olympian, 5 for hockey and 1 in softball, a Hockey Hall of Fame member, senior hockey development for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and is also a practicing doctor. Ethan Bear. Ethan is an NHL player with the Carolina Hurricanes, proud member of the Ochapowace Nation, Cree descent, also runs a nonprofit camp for Indigenous youths and has become a leading voice for the indigenous community amongst professional athletes. Soroya Tinker. Soroya is a former NCAA standout at Yale University, current member of the Toronto Six of the NWHL, has represented Canada internationally in ice and ball hockey, and has been outspoken against racism and for inclusion in hockey. She's also a podcaster as well. Rob Knezerit. Rob is a former OHL player and is the current VP of Youth Hockey and Industry Growth with the NHL. He is a key cog in improving inclusion, diversity, and accessibility in the game of hockey, specifically on a grassroots level. Welcome everybody to the panel, and I'm really glad to get this party started. So let's start off with a couple of easy questions. Zach, I want to ask you, what are some of the biggest challenges in making hockey more diverse and inclusive sport from your viewpoint as an outsider looking in?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, unlike other sports, hockey requires lots of equipment and it's more expensive. I think the barrier, the entry to getting into hockey is a lot more expensive than other sports. So I think giving access to kids of all different backgrounds, all different financial backgrounds, is going to be extremely important. I think that, being a part of the NHLPA, that's something that we focus on with the Goals and Dreams Foundation. And I think that's really important. I think that just being in an inclusive environment and showing kids that it doesn't matter where you come from, there are people of all different colors and races and religions in the NHL, and there's a path for you to make it. So I think that those things are really important.
Ethan, how would you put your spin on that same question?
He's right with like the equipment and the expense part. Like it's tough for a lot of families, but I think for a big thing is honestly, I think parents have to be willing to take their kids to the sport and put what they have into getting them what they need. And then another thing would be like having diversity in coaches and trainers and stuff like that to teach the younger ones that it's okay to be yourself and to be proud of wherever you come from. And I think that'd be a big step.
What do you think about that, Hayley?
We all know that hockey is traditionally a white male sport, and obviously the roots of hockey come from mainly North America, like Canada, and then into the US and around the world. It's an expensive sport and a lot of barriers to entry. So when you have a lot of, I'll speak from a Canadian perspective, a lot of new Canadians or new immigrants to your country, hockey is often the last thing that they're going to join because a pair of skates costs $800 and a stick costs a couple $100. Also, in a lot of these countries, people are not playing ice hockey. There's very few places in the world that have ice, especially with climate change now, even to access outdoor ice. And so there's those barriers for sure. There's also a mentality, I think, that still exists around hockey that's changing slowly. And I think I feel very proud to be part of the Toronto Maple Leafs, an organization that really embraces diversity and equity and inclusion and different thoughts, different people from different walks of life coming in to have a perspective. When those things start to happen at the top level of pro sport, they trickle down into minor hockey, into all the other levels of hockey. And I think hockey is a very top-down influenced game. People see what the NHL teams are doing and they want to mimic that. So the more that we can get hockey into the 21st century to catch up with sports like the NFL and the NBA to keep promoting diversity of thought and inclusion, I think the better off the sport overall will be.
What do you think about that as well, Rob?
So the biggest challenge is really not to make the assumption that if we build it, people will come. I think we have to be more intentional. We have to bring the game to communities. We need representation and local heroes to help us out. And I think we really need to make this a community sport. So the participation and people supporting the game have to resemble their community. So there's lots of work to be done. We have to show this audience that we're authentic and sincere, and we have to ensure that if we really want to make hockey diverse, that we kind of put our money where our mouth is and make sure we make it appropriate investments with the people strategy, the investment strategy, the infrastructure strategy to bring everyone together.
Troy, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, I think we talk a lot about the affordability piece. I think that that's a piece that comes to mind a lot. I think we do need to make the game more affordable. I think a lot of our BIPOC communities can't afford the equipment, the skates, all that stuff that's needed to play the sport. They can, go pick up a basketball and a pair of shoes and go play on the court. Rather than spend all that money on hockey. So I think that's our first barrier. I think that's a huge thing that needs to be improved upon. But again, that's just the first step, and there's so many more. Representation is another huge thing that needs to be emphasized. I think that the Black players and the Black coaches that are coaching now should be highlighted and should be shown within our social media spheres and on ESPN, TSN, whatever you might be watching. I think it's so important that we see those BIPOC faces commentating and analyzing hockey. I think that it goes to show that, those young Black kids that may be able to see themselves on the basketball court, but now can see themselves on the ice as well, because their Black counterparts are being praised and being put in the face of the media. So I think that that's another way that we can improve our change with diversity inclusion.
What should the role of professional elite athletes be in terms of their influence on youth when it comes to diversity and inclusion? Ethan, what do you think?
Honestly, like as a pro athlete, yeah, like you said, be a role model, lead by example. But at the same time, like just, when you can give advice of, just basically on how to get to where you are, or little things that you can do better to give yourself a better chance as a pro athlete. Like, when kids ask you questions or like you do like things like this, like, advice is the biggest thing. And just being honest and genuine about it. I think that can go a long way.
Hayley, I'd love to get your viewpoint on this as well.
Well, I think professional athletes, in my experience and opinion, are very open-minded people. They've often, had to grow up in different environments, face a lot of adversity. They're often really resilient. They're often counted on to also, kind of carry the torch and have a microscope on them. So a lot of athletes feel a lot of pressure. I feel like they have to sort of watch what they say and do and are very guarded. And some athletes use it as a platform to ignite change. And so I don't really think that I can sit here and say, every pro athlete should have a platform and, be advocating for different social issues. But certainly I would say that I think athletes, when they're passionate about something and they feel like they can make a change, have to understand that they have an incredible amount of power and influence to be able to do that. And to make change for good. So, we just saw with the Polish javelin athlete coming out of Tokyo, she auctions off her silver medal and for $125,000 to help a child that needs a heart operation. And, it's a world story, and the child's going to get the operation and she's going to get her medal back because a store donated it back. So when good is done, I think the world loves it when they see athletes stepping up for good and also being brave and speaking their truth.
So Roy, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's huge. I think as professional athletes, I think once you enter that professional athlete title or sphere, I think that we are awarded that platform as an athlete. And I think as athletes, we need to choose what we want to use our platforms for, because we do have that ability to influence the youth below us and the people that are going to be in our position in 10, 20 years. So I think as athletes, we got to decide what we're using our platforms for, whether that's social justice, whether that's LGBTQ+, whatever it may be. I think that we have the ability to affect so many young children. And I think that we can do that in such a positive sense if we choose to do so.
Rob, can you elaborate on that?
Well, the great thing about whether it be the league or players or people that have kind of power in our game is we have a platform. All of us in some way had our community supporting us, and I think we owe it back to the game to understand the benefits of diversity. And I think we owe it back to the game to make our game like our communities. Although the game has been amplified at the professional level, and we see these big stages and these big stadiums, it's still a local game. Like where we all start, and the genesis of this is in a small hockey rink that has a very ammonia-like smell. You smell the Zamboni. We have Tim Hortons in Canada on the way there. I just think we have to realize that if we really want our game to grow, we need to understand the cultural relevance of our community, and that we all have a role to play in making this game bigger and better. And there are times, I think, with the lack of inclusivity, are we yet to see our best hockey player? If we're not capturing the entire market, is there someone out there that never had a chance for whatever reason that might have been, better than my hero Gretzky, or better than Austin Matthews, or one of these people? Who knows?
Zach, the NHL and majority of the hockey world, they close during Christmas, obviously. And how do you address other faith-based groups that are expected to play on their significant holy days? How's that kind of play out?
I think it's a tough question. Obviously, I think that it doesn't just revolve around hockey and sports. I think that even in public schools and things like that, I think that the question is universal in that sense. But it's a tough question because a lot of times, sport triumphs over religion in a sense, and that's the way it is. I think that in basketball, players play on Christmas too, so hockey is different, where you get those 3 days off. And but it's a tough question. I don't think there's an easy answer for it, because the schedule is already so jam packed. So, but I think that every player has the right to make their own decision, and if you have a religion and you choose not to play on that day because the game is scheduled, then I think that all players should support that person. And it's obviously a bigger question as to whether leagues should not be scheduling games on all those holy days.
So Hayley, being one of the most well-known female athletes in hockey, I'd love to get your take on how diversity and inclusion is reflected into the women's game, and for young girls more specifically.
Well, I think right now the biggest barrier to women's hockey is that there isn't one unified league, and we need to have the best players in the world in one league. You have the PWHPA, you have the NWHL. Both can't seem to find common ground to come together to make one league, which would make professional women's hockey much, I think, expedite its happening. So that's probably the first step that has to happen. Then secondly, once that happens, you need to have television. You need to have broadcasters on board, because if you don't have broadcasters, you don't have sponsorship dollars and revenue to drive the leagues forward. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation, but I do think that is the really the first step, is to get one unified league moving forward.
So, Rob, there are many fans and players that are eager to see more inclusion and diversity in the NHL, but don't want it to become an activist or advocate type of league. How do you address that?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I wish we were there. I think it's just part of our fabric to recognize that no one should be shunned away, or whether it be a fan, whether it be a player, whether it be a family, because of their background. I think hockey celebrates a whole bunch of things. Why wouldn't we want to celebrate the openness of our thinking and not casting any judgment? So it's a tough question, kind of with mixed emotions. I'm like, let everyone have a chance. Like, what's the harm? And I know many people like that. Listen, I know there are people in our game that might, and not necessarily in our game, there are people that watch our game that might have a different opinion. But I do think we can drown those poor messages by collectively just standing by what the game should represent, which is, a more diverse audience, a more inclusive audience. It should be, hockey is truly for everyone. And there's so much richness that I never played a game in the NHL. I had a chance, but never made it. And the wonderful attributes that this game provided me should be able to provide men, women, black, white, girls, boys. Like, it's just a wonderful learnings in life. And everything I take as a result of the things I've learned in the game and I've applied in my world now, it's just such a gift. And why, selfishly, I wouldn't want to just hold on to this. This should be for all kids and all families.
So, Soroy, you're known to be an outspoken individual when it comes to diversity and inclusion in hockey. One of the comments you have made is that coaches need to know their players on a deeper level. Can you elaborate on that and how it connects to inclusion and diversity?
Yeah, for sure. I think growing up, I definitely had my coaches that spoke to me and my coaches that I know didn't have that big of a connection with me. But I think from what I've experienced, I've realized that it's so important for coaches to develop those relationships with their players. I think that each player is going to be coached differently and should be coached differently based on a wide range of things. And a lot of those things fall within the diversity and inclusion categories. I think a lot of my opinions were different than my teammates, and I think it was important for my coach to know that I didn't necessarily agree and get my opinion on these things as the only Black player on the team. So I think by generating those relationships and really making an effort to make those relationships with their players, they're going to get to know them better, and their players are going to ultimately have a better experience, and so are the coaches.
How do you guys see the progression of growing this game and players being more free to speaking out? Do you guys feel the difference? Do you see the difference? Do you compare it to when you were growing up watching hockey players? What are your thoughts on where the league is going right now, Ethan?
Honestly, I think it's great. Like, yeah, like you see more people of color coming into the game, but like I think, you know, with everyone speaking up, I think a lot of the, you know, goes back to social media. Like everything's more out there now in terms of a lot of things within the human race, and I think it's like, you know, more players are, you know, when you see players of color, like you're actually believing that they have a chance to make the league, and then with players, you know, with social media, you get to see kind of how they live a day-to-day lifestyle in a little bit, and you know, that gives people an idea of what they should do and what they shouldn't, and I think that's another big reason of why you're seeing more players come out, because you get to see like, oh, this guy is the same race as me, yeah, and he did it, so I could do it too, and that just goes a sense of, I think, a lot of basically just the way the world is now these days.
Just for young kids of color, Indigenous kids that are checking this out right now, with the recent situation that you went through, how did you personally deal with that, and what lessons can a kid take away from your strength and how you moved on and kept your focus on, you know, the plan, which is to continue being at the best that you can as a hockey player and not letting that distract you?
I think honestly is like you can't really listen to it, obviously. Like you got to understand that a lot of people aren't educated in you know, that sense, and so I don't think you can take it too serious. You know, like you know, in our game, you have very passionate fans. You know, people get angry, and sometimes they cross that line, and which they shouldn't. But you know, that has no effect. That shouldn't have effect on you. You know, you have to be, you know, it sucks, but you have to be the bigger person and do what's right. And honestly, it's tough because it's just a tough thing to really deal with, and it's important to keep believing yourself and you know, to keep working hard and to try to prove others wrong, and it's not because your skin color at all. It's just you know, that's the way the game is these days. I think it's more about the player you are and the skill set you have, and it's just more of like a freelance. But you know, if you look at social media and all that stuff, like anybody can get a word in on whatever account they want, and so it's like you can't put too much emphasis on it. But yeah, like it's like you have to be strong. You have to know that, you know, this isn't the first time, and you know, it might not be the last. But you know, you're not alone. Like there's, like you said, you got your teammates. There's a lot of people who deep down care about who you are as a person, and it doesn't matter the race. Like it's just about being a good, genuine person, working hard, and being honest.
Yeah, solid. And Zach, you're one of the few Jewish hockey players in the NHL. What does that mean to you and to your community, especially with the current rise in anti-Jewish discrimination?
Yeah, no, I think, you know, obviously I'm part of a non-visible minority where you wouldn't know what religion you come from just by looking at you. So it's a little bit different than being of color. But for me, you know, I've been really fortunate to grow up in such a supportive environment, and our community is a smaller one. So for me to be able to show kids of my community that you have an opportunity to be an NHL player and that you can play in the league and things like that, I think is something that's really special and something that I hold close to my heart. I get parents coming up to me and saying, oh, like, you know, we always tell our kids to be doctors and lawyers, and now they want to be hockey players because of you. So that always you know, feels good. But obviously, yeah, whenever you're different, it comes with some sort of hate. And growing up, I definitely experienced things like that, you know, comments and whatnot. But you have a strong support system, you have a strong community, and you just have to continue to fight against that and continue to educate people. I think Ethan said that really well, where it's oftentimes an education issue where people just aren't aware of what they're saying. And once you educate them and really show them that, you know, you can't be saying these things, like, it's common sense to us, but yeah, I think education is so important. And if you can continue to educate the next generation, then hopefully discrimination will go down and down.
And with that, I'd like to say thank you, everybody, for joining us. Really appreciate your time. This panel has been great. We've got some really great people that are leading the way on and off the ice. And I want them all to know that whatever they're doing, they've got to do it for the children. When you're thinking about it, in the offices, on the ice, at the end of the day, it's about growing the game for these kids. So when you're feeling like, you know, you want to stop or you want to quit, or this might be too much or too much for you to do or to handle, just think about those children out there. And with that being said, for Zach Hyman, Hayley Wickenheiser, Ethan Bear, Soroya Tinker, Rob Knezerit, my name is Kwame, and we're out.
Hi everyone, I'm Yael Averbush, former U.S. Women's National Team soccer player and founder of Techni Football, and I'm here to tell everyone that we should all be getting behind initiatives like Unity Through Sport to create a truly global, inclusive community through the power of sport.
The power of sport is limitless. It's the great unifier, and you know, there's so much good that can be done for others, and there's so much good that can be drawn from it. And so happy to say, you know, that I'm happy to say that my career has been involved in it, and I know we've helped a lot of people and a lot of families with everything that we've been able to do throughout, regardless of the sport itself.
When you have an opportunity to hear from your favorite athletes and realize they're going through the same things you are, they have the same fears you do, I think that only helps at least form the sense of we're all in it. So for me, being able to still have people come together and speak and tell what's important to them only helps people. It only humanizes them. I think the more of that we get, the better we all are.
One thing, at least in my life, and it's something glaring, I think, in a lot of our lives, it is sport that's been helpful in bringing people together. What else? I look at high school, for example. What else, other activities in high school or events in high school are going to bring people that might not have much else in common together? And it's been sport.
I hate politics. I hate what goes on in the world because of who you are and where you live. And for me, sport just brings out the best in everybody.
Sport gives us the ability to stop all the talk. It doesn't help you in this environment. It's one human being and another experiencing something together as human beings. A non-verbal communication is what sports is. You play, you go through pain, you compete, and no matter what, everyone's okay, and you share that experience and grow together.
Hi, I'm Odsonne Edouard-Crystal Palace, and I'm here to tell everyone to get behind initiatives like Unity Through Sport, so we can work together to end division and discrimination, and to create a truly global inclusive community through the power of sport.
People look at someone and they respect them because they can see what they've done. There's no phoniness. There's no lying. It's right out there for everyone to see. And people respect that. No matter where you come from, no matter what your background is. In sports, if you compete, if you try, If you improve and you get good results, people love that.
Wow, what an incredible show, and what a great way to officially launch unity through sport. Thanks to all of our incredible speakers and participants, and thank you to Unity Through Sport for putting this amazing event together and for allowing me to be your host tonight. I encourage all of you to learn more about the organization by going to unitythroughsport.com, and that's where you'll find information about getting involved in any capacity as a sponsor, a donor, a volunteer, or maybe a participant. Your involvement will help all of us truly create a global inclusive community and to make this world a better place. Thank you again, everyone, and have a wonderful night.